Jumanji, an adventure where every roll of the dice unleashes wild chaos and thrilling challenges in a jungle world come to life. This film's enduring popularity is fueled by its ability to balance suspense, action, humor, and heart, placing it in our memories as a beloved 90s classic. Jumanji is more than just a disaster film about jungle animals running wild in suburbia, but rather a meaningful and intricate look at a relationship between father and son that showcase the writings of Sigmund Freud. Join me, Professor Onions, as we peel back the layers of Freudian psychology and Jumanji. The story is about Alan Parrish, who in the 1960s is transported into a mystical realm of Jumanji after playing a magical board game with his friend Sarah. Later in the 1990s, the game is continued by two children who must team up with adult Alan and adult Sarah to play the game to completion, unleashing mayhem at every turn. One of the most dangerous challenges unleashed from Jumanji is the safari hunter Van Pelt. Of all the violent beasts to be released from the board game, Van Pelt is the only human. So who is Van Pelt, really? And more importantly, why is he portrayed by Jonathan Hyde, who also plays Alan's father Sam Parrish? Regarding Van Pelt, there are only a few lines describing his background. Also, Van Pelt seems to obey the invisible set of rules put on him by the game.
I could have shot you at any moment.
Then why didn't you?
You didn't roll the dice. Alan did.
Van Pelt and Alan seem to have some off-camera history that is vaguely described by Alan in the movie.
He's a hunter. He kills things, that's what he does. And right now he wants to hunt me and kill me, okay?
Why you?
Why me? I don't know. Everything about me he finds offensive. You think it'd be a waste of his time.
Van Pelt and Sam Parrish being portrayed by the same actor serves as a direct link to the psychological fear Alan has of his father's power, love, and criticism. In the beginning of the film, Alan plans to run away from home after his father, a wealthy and successful business owner, has demanded that Alan be sent to a special boarding school. We learn that Alan, unfortunately, runs away from his problems instead of confronting them or taking responsibility for his actions. Ultimately, Alan is intimidated, afraid, and anxious about his father's status, masculinity, and authority. Ironically, Alan survived 26 years in the terrifying jungle, which would prove that he is a very brave and skilled man. But despite those accomplishments, he is still dominated by his father's criticism and disapproval. This double casting choice is similar to the traditions of the 1904 play Peter Pan, written by J.M. Barrie. In this, the actor playing the father, George Darling, also plays Captain Hook. This tradition ran so deep that even Disney Animation cast one actor, Hans Conried, to voice both actors in the 1953 feature. So is the double casting of Jonathan Hyde a nod to Captain Hook? This is an interesting coincidence, as Robin Williams played Pan in Spielberg's 1991 Hook. When it comes to Alan's deep psychological trauma, perhaps Freud could explain more. Sigmund Freud, the famous psychoanalyst, wrote about many topics such as trauma, dreams, ego, repression, transference, and projection. Alan has deep emotional pain from his father's harsh coldness. Freud would say Alan has a negative father complex, which is a distrust and fearful view of his father. Freud famously described father-son relationships with the Oedipus complex, in which a son would unconsciously desire his mother and want to remove his father. Let's also take a minute to highlight that Sarah Whittle, Alan's romantic interest, does look a little like his mother. Freud first wrote about the Oedipus complex in his 1899 book, The Interpretation of Dreams. He theorizes that the Oedipus complex is a psychological trait we kept from our evolution from apes over millions of years. Jumanji coincidentally also references evolution when Peter is told by the game that he will slip back.
A law of Jumanji hadn't been broken. You will slip back even more than your token. Peter, your hand!
And he devolves into an ape. The game punishes Peter this way because he was trying to cheat. The board game has a personality and a sort of magical consciousness.
The game thinks our rules. What do you mean the game thinks?
The game having a spirit or ability to think is a topic Freud wrote about as well. In his 1913 book, Totem and Taboo, Freud writes about animism, which is the belief that objects contain magical spirits. Freud writes a whole chapter on this topic and theorizes that these beliefs are a consequence of human repression.
My father could barely hug me.
When you carry around so much repressed anger, it attracts a lot of negative energy.
Alan, towards the end of the film, is identifying his repressed feelings of fear, anger, and confusion.
26 years buried in the deepest, darkest jungle, and I still became my father.
At the climax of the story, Alan finally stands up to Van Pelt instead of running away. He has what's called a breakthrough, which in therapy terms is when a patient identifies a path towards healing.
My father told me you should always face what you're afraid of.
This leads to the epic conclusion. Alan wins the game of Jumanji and the whole world resets. As we peel back the layers, we see that Jumanji uses interesting Freudian psychology to elevate the storytelling, emotion, and gravitas of the film, and also reminds us to be very careful when playing board games.
Right? No, I'm not afraid of board games. I'm afraid of getting Jumanji'd.
Oh. Jumanji?
Thanks for watching. Till next time, this is Professor Onions.